Hi, and welcome to our online discussions. Before watching the video, I only have two simple requests for you. First is to get a paper or a notebook and jot down all the important ideas that you need to know. Second is to focus. Happy learning! For this video, we're going to talk about all of the discussions and lessons for week 2. Let's start! For week 2, we're going to discuss Rizal's cultural roots. These lessons recall the life of Jose Rizal through the written works of various historians and writers. It also presents Rizal's background, his roots, and the events that were significant in the formation of his character. So for lesson 1, the Ascendance of Chinese Mestizo, this focuses on cultural roots of Rizal's family and the significance of the Chinese in the Philippine history and civilization. For lesson 2, family, childhood, and early education of Rizal, this discusses the hero's family background, childhood experiences, and notable achievements during his early education. For lesson 3, agrarian relations and the friar lands. This presents the issues on land ownership during the Spanish colonial period. The Ascendance of Chinese Mestizo. So this will present the significant role of Chinese mestizos in the Philippine history, governance, and economy. It also shows how the Chinese mestizos influenced the character of Rizal, who has Chinese roots. Philippine history is not complete as basis for understanding contemporary society unless it includes the contributions of the Chinese mestizos to the development of the Philippines as a nation. They played a significant role in the formation of the Filipino middle class, in the call for reforms, in the 1898 revolution, and in the formation of Filipino nationalism. According to historians, as early as the 16th century, the Chinese were already in the Philippine archipelago. However, some historians asserted that it was during the pre-colonial period that the Chinese first arrived in the country as merchants between the coasts of Manila and China. Still, it was only during the Spanish colonial period that Chinese immigrants became prominent in the Philippine society. That's why in 1594, the Spanish governor Luis Perez Dasmariñas created Binondo as a permanent settlement for Chinese mestizos who converted to Catholicism. So in this part of Manila, Chinese merchants and traders were free to do their business. Binondo also became the place of intermarriages between Chinese immigrants and Filipino natives, thus the emergence of Chinese mestizos. The photos you see in the presentation are the Chinese mestizos. Up until now, they are still occupying the Binondo. That is where Chinatown is located. Chinese mestizo communities, aside from Binondo, emerged in many other parts of the archipelago. In Manila, notable communities were Santa Cruz and Tondo. In the early 17th century, more than 100 Chinese individuals were married to native Filipinos in Iloilo, Pampanga, and Cebu. In northern Luzon, Chinese mestizos could be found in Pangasinan, Benguet, and Mountain Province. So noon pa man, napakarami na talagang Chinese sa Pilipinas, magpahanggang ngayon. From the beginning of the Spanish colonial period until 1740, the inhabitants of the Philippines were classified into three. Those are Spaniards, Indios, and Chinese. And of course, as the Chinese mestizo population grew, questions regarding their legal status as inhabitants of the country arose. It was only in 1741 that their legal status was officially established when the whole population of the Philippines was reclassified into four according to tax payment or tribute. These classes or classifications are first the Spaniards and the Spanish, the Mestizos, the Indios, the Chinese, and Chinese mestizos. So the Spaniards and Spanish are not required to pay tribute or tax, whereas the other three were required to pay taxes depending on their income. More so, a policy that limited the number of Chinese individuals who could reside in the Philippines and restricted their area of settlement was implemented. At the end of the 19th century, there were already almost 500,000 Chinese mestizos in the Philippines, with 46,000 living in Manila. But who are the Chinese Mestizo? A Chinese Mestizo then was first any person born of a Chinese father and an Indio mother. A Chinese Mestizo could also be a Spanish Mestiza and a Chinese Mestizo, a child of a Spanish Mestiza and a Chinese Mestizo. However, a Chinese Mestiza and an Indio were listed as Indios. Let us now proceed to the significance of the Chinese Mestizo. The expulsion of Chinese immigrants in the Philippines enabled the Chinese Mestizos to take over the markets that the former previously controlled. Chinese Mestizos became prominent and influential figures in the areas of industry, commerce, business during the Spanish colonial period. They carried on a lucrative by collecting goods from the north and selling them to Manila and nearby provinces. They monopolized the internal trading in the Philippines, while the Spanish mestizos were concerned with foreign trade. So the Chinese mestizo have a huge and a vital role in the trading industry in the Philippines back then. The entrepreneurial power of the Chinese mestizos gave way to the emergence of the Philippine middle class, described as more active and enterprising, more prudent and pioneering, more oriented to trade and commerce than the Indios. That's according to Bowring on 1963. So since many Filipinos are already marrying Chinese back then, dumami ang mga Chinese mestizo and they give way to the emergence of the Philippine middle class since they know a lot about trading industry. Also, the formation of the Filipino identity was evident during the latter part of the 19th century when the Spanish became clearly influential in the economy of the Philippines as a Spanish colony. So this caused the Spaniards to be concerned with the ability of the Chinese mestizos to cause discord in society. So there, because the Chinese mestizo have been so influential in during that time, the Spanish or the friars became so concerned because they think Indios are more loyal than the Chinese mestizo. So mas inisip nila na pwedeng mag-tridor sa kanila ang Chinese kesa sa mga Pilipino. By 1800s, Chinese mestizos in the provinces began to form opinions regarding the Spanish colonial rule. It was also difficult to separate the Indios from Chinese mestizos since they identified themselves with each other socially and culturally. So Chinese mestizos shared grievances with the Indios about the harsh conditions under the Spanish rule. Spanish feared that the independent mindset and liberalism of Chinese mestizos might influence the political consciousness of Indios. Since the Chinese mestizos began to form middle-class Filipinos or middle-class citizens who were able to send their children to higher education, nagkaroon ngayon ng consciousness ang mga tao. And as the Chinese mestizos lead the Filipinos or the Indios that time, they were able to identify lahat ng harsh experiences under the Spanish rule. So doon na nagsimula ang consciousness ng mga tao. The most vivid manifestation of the budding sense of Filipino nationalism appeared in the late 1870s in the writings of Pedro Paterno and Gregorio Sangquiangco, who were both Chinese mestizos. The writings were nurtured by Jose Rizal, a known pride of the Malay race, but also a Chinese mestizo. So Rizal descended from a pure Chinese ancestor and the long line of Chinese mestizos and mestizas. So Jose Rizal is one of those people who developed consciousness during that time. The significant role of Chinese mestizos in the making of the nation was highly evident as the turn of the century. Their involvement in the armed revolt against the colonizers showed that they recognized Spain as the enemy, the oppressor. The Philippine Revolution of 1869 to 1898 was the act of determination on the part of the Filipinos, Indios, and Chinese mestizos alike to claim for themselves and for the future generations the incomparable birthright of nationhood. So during that time, Chinese mestizos played a vital role in claiming the sovereignty of the Philippines. That's it for our discussion today. I hope you're able to understand our lessons. If not, you can always go back and replay the videos. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for watching. God bless.